you want to book acting work. We hear that, and we want you to have that. But here's the thing. The industry is desperate for leaders, for human connection. And that's what it really wants, even if it doesn't feel like that. And that's how you book work.
By taking you inside the craft, the casting room, and the business, and bringing other industry experts into the conversation, we really dig in. We pull back the curtain of the industry and show you how much power you really have as an artist. By bringing your humanity to the work and the industry, you become an artistic leader, the kind of actor who books work.
Nothing excites us more than seeing you express your unique artistic voice in the work and humanize the business.
And have all the tools you need to be a championship-level working actor at this very time in an industry that needs your voice and your leadership.
Industry and artistry. This is the only place you're going to hear this.
I'm Risa.
And I'm Steve, and this is the Acting Podcast from the BGB Studio.
Are we rolling?
Risa. Yeah, we're going. It's all happening.
Wow, I'm catching up. I just got off a plane. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Shouldn't apologize.
Yeah, don't apologize for that.
For flying.
You say thank you for your patience as opposed to saying sorry. That's what all the
Okay.
the mindfulness folks say. Excuse me.
What's with you? What's that about?
I have a cold. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
And what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to soldier on anyways. But throughout the podcast, I'll probably articulate how sick I am, just so everyone thinks that, wow, he's really a warrior and soldiering on. It's martyrdom is what I'm going to go for, like this.
But you are a soldier. I believe that you are. I mean, life sometimes requires some soldiering.
And I think as a parent, you just get in this come on, pull your head out of your ass and you got to show up. Like your kids don't care that you're sick, so you just go, right? So I'm going to sound a little bit weird and I'm going to cough a little bit. I'll sound like Michael Sean McCary. No, Boys to Men? No?
Yes,
all right.
Thank you for that reference for those of you who don't know.
That are very white, but and I'll probably hack throughout the most poignant moments of this podcast.
Right. Yeah.
But I'm.
Do you need a little sympathy or empathy right now?
No, actually, this is where my mother would say,
Yeah.
"Get off the cross. We need the wood," which is.
Or my mother would say, "Get over yourself."
It's same deal.
Same deal.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Moms, you know?
Moms, yeah. And I say that to my daughter sometimes. And my son won't let me, but I said that just this week when I was in New York, moving her in. And, it was interesting. I got some perspective and talk about being present. It's so great to just stop your life and pull back a little bit and to go, what exactly has been going on? To give yourself some space to look at what's happening and then to come back to what do I care about, what matters, what's important, what isn't. That's a big, important process, and I don't do that often enough. I don't step back for that amount of time and switch things that dramatically to allow myself to see what my life is, my work is.
And again, this notion of soldiering on, I think we all get into this. Well, you just got to, suit up and show up, and you just fall into that pattern pretty consistently, no matter what's happening. And you got to step back every once in a while, which is important.
And that speaks to what we're going to talk about today, I think, don't you?
No doubt. In as much as actors who part of their soldiering is about navigating a consistent flow of rejection, like an emotionally violent amount of no, and not just no, but sometimes no in this vacuum of we're not even telling you why, but then sometimes the specific surgical, pointed no for this specific reason. You're too much of this or too little of this or whatever else. And it's hard to take that personally, particularly if you're doing your work, personal work, the work required to invest personally into this stuff. And they're not saying no to your choices. They're saying no to you on some fundamental level, which is hard.
Yeah. And you take that personally because you think I am to this or to that. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not hot enough. I'm not famous enough. All of those things start to put you into a place of questioning your own value.
For sure. So we're going to go through a pretty in-depth discussion of rejection, but fear not, there's hope in all of this.
Yeah, because on the other side of rejection is what?
Go ahead. What's there?
Is hope, is presence, is self, is the allowance of you to take ownership of your own experience and to not have other people define you, and what that looks like and how to take care of yourself, show up for yourself and the thing you love, your talent, your humanity, your craft, your life.
Right, no doubt.
Yeah.
You and I have both been rejected. I'm not going to speak for you, but many, many times. in
Sure,
this
yeah,
industry.
speak for me, man. I've been around a long time and have lots of rejections.
And what's interesting
Yeah.
is the people I know who have, and maybe this is to a certain extent true of me when I was pursuing an acting career, the people I know who've been at it for a while and faced the rejection, you end up, because you can't help but, having this calloused exoskeleton, this, well, I'm not going to let it get to me kind of thing.
I'm tough.
And yet it does.
Yeah.
It does on some level. You internalize it on some level.
Yeah.
And it changes your work. It's hard to then be as vulnerable. I have a writer friend of mine who's been doing it 40 years, very successful, but he has figured out some way to write with his heart and pour his entire being into it and then give it up and let them dissect it and throw it against the wall and,
Yeah.
and violate what he wrote. And he has success with it. So there's
So how does he
financial
do
validation.
that? How does he sustain that? How does he allow that to happen?
It's interesting, and I think this speaks to the kind of people that survive in this industry. There are certain people who might be wired a certain way as opposed to others. I don't know that I would have, because of my hypersensitivity, the ability to navigate that without a really intense regimen of mindfulness and self-care. I don't do it now, so I don't know what
You
that
don't
pursuit is.
put yourself out to be rejected
That's
as an
right.
actor.
And
Yeah.
perhaps part of the reason why I couldn't make it work is because, like I said, a studio like this wasn't around back then to show me, to give me some of those tools.
Sure.
Because at a certain point, it just hurt too damn much. And
Yeah.
so I found myself not investing as much as I should have. And of course, we offer a lot of classes and exercises and tools to keep actors in that place of hypersensitivity in the face of an emotionally violent industry. But I think he internalizes, and that's not healthy. But so let's talk about rejection here, and I think we don't have to go into the details of what rejection is. Actors know that. But
You
it
all
can
know
come
that, yeah,
from,
yeah.
again, in various manifestations of the direct, you suck and here's why. And that can come from a casting director or an agent, or kind of a sideways version of it, which is we chose this person and not you, and then you look at that person, and on some level you figure out that you were rejected for certain reasons, whatever. And I think the first thing, the most important perhaps, in understanding how to navigate rejection so that you can keep showing up with your talent, which requires vulnerability, hypersensitivity, is a deep understanding of the reality of the industry.
Yeah, that's really important.
And that the reality of the industry is rejection.
Yeah.
So you can't look at the top of the mountain and say, that's what I want. Right, I want to be the TV, the series regular TV star that doesn't feel any pain, because this industry involves rejection. That's just the nature of this system. And so I think if you approach the industry with entitlement or leaning too hard into the fantasy dream of I'm going to book, that big one this week or whatever,
And all will be well.
right? And it's a fine line, by the way,
Yeah.
then that is an active participation in ignorance, in not understanding the true nature of the industry. And so what happens is in Buddhism, they call it the second arrow. So the first is you were rejected. Oh, that sucks. I got struck by that arrow. There's a wound. That sucks. And then the second arrow is, but I shouldn't have been rejected. Why was I rejected? This sucks. So not being in that place of acceptance of, 98% of the time you're going to be rejected. You're going to be rejected for ridiculous reasons because there's 130 cooks in the kitchen and each have a different idea, which is really no idea at all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So what can happen is that you show up, and sometimes this is called the curse of the MFA, in as much as you and I call it that, is you show up with an expectation to take nothing away from the work that you've done. And by the way, people show up in Los Angeles and within 2 months book TV series all the time. I know, I did it. That's not real life.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to last forever
it's
at
fleeting.
all. It is fleeting, yeah.
As it was when it happened to me. And so there needs to be an understanding that you can't be in the secret, I'm going to manifest. This gets a little bit tricky for folks, right? Because I'm trying to stay positive and let's keep toxic people out of my life who are telling me that, it's really tough. And I'm not saying wallow in the shit of the industry and, this sucks so bad. But understand the true nature, so that you can be present with it, of this industry, which is that most of it is rejection. Rejection is the norm, so get right with that. Again, this Buddhist notion of it will be suffering, and that's not a bad thing. That hopefully will allow you to celebrate the victories when they happen, but also be in full acceptance of the rejection when it happens too.
The thing about that even the word rejection, though, I would love to reframe that a little bit, because it's not like people are out there standing on the top of the mountain rejecting you and pushing you down and hoping you fail, and then pushing you down every time you climb up.
Right.
They are so fully in their own shit. They're so fully in their own fear of rejection that they're just trying to make work and stay alive and afloat in their jobs. And so by doing that, they look at you as a potential fit into their scheme, into their project. And if you don't fit, you don't fit. They're not putting you in the garbage. But that's what it feels like. That's what you're doing to yourself. And we'll talk about all the baggage that comes with it that we all bring to this from our past. But the truth is, they are not rejecting you. You have to really understand that. Right. They're not choosing you because you don't fit at that moment in the scheme of things, or someone will fight for you, but then somebody else higher up or in some other, idea of what this hierarchy is will say no, And so I was just talking to an actor the other day who's a beautiful actor, and I've tried to cast her a number of times, and she's really gone to the other side of things in a wonderful way and takes responsibility for herself and her work and all that. But at the end of the day, it came back to, so why do you think on all those projects I wasn't cast?
Yeah.
What was wrong with me? What happened? Everyone said I did amazing work. I was the director's choice. You said it was amazing. I know the work was strong. So what happened? Why did I not get cast? And we talked about all the reasons, and I said to her, which I believe is true, and I think everybody needs to hear this, your moment comes when it comes, for a project or for your career. And she's one of those people who has an old soul, and the roles, I believe, are going to come to her in her late 30s, not in her late 20s when she was hoping for them, desperately. And it's really understanding who you are in all this and knowing that if you're in this for the long haul, for the long game of this thing, that it's going to happen when it happens. It's also going to happen in spurts and at surprising moments. And you can't look at every single quote-unquote rejection or non-acceptance as the definition of who you are and what you're capable of. But the industry, people in this town and people in this industry are struggling themselves. And it's not about not taking it personally, because it's personal, because you're putting your heart out there, but it's not meant to hurt you and to make you feel less than. And I think you need to really understand where other people are coming from in their process. And if you've been on the other side of the table, then you'll know that. But that's a big one.
Yeah, for sure. And again, this notion, excuse me, of understanding how the industry works. And I feel like there's work to be done there. And actors don't necessarily do that kind of work.
Right.
Like really the deep dive of what is going on here, what are all of the steps involved in someone getting cast of making a movie, except for if you've done this, and if you listen to some of our other podcasts here and heard from producers who talk about how to birth this film or TV show. There's so much involved, and so little of it actually has to do with you, because they're just desperately trying to get this thing made.
Right, yeah.
And so with that understanding, I think it doesn't take away the full impact of the fact that you've invested emotionally in this thing that you've wanted. There's craving there, and you don't actually get it. But at the same time, I think it can dull the point of the rejection so that it doesn't knock you down. Again, this understanding of the true nature of the industry. And I think what happens is when you hear that no, it's almost on some level easier, in as much as you don't have to do the work, to internalize it, to look inside and say, oh, this means I'm either lacking something or I have too much of something. So how can I change? And that's problematic, because you can't necessarily change the industry. So you must be the problem. And so you start getting in this weird cycle of I'm not enough and they know. Again, this notion of you giving them their power, this self-other, us and them kind of dynamic that actors show up with.
Yeah.
And so the rejection almost starts, fueling your own narratives and your own self-doubt. But what happens is, from this scattered place of so many people desperately trying to spin all the plates, and they're falling and cracking, and then you walk in for your audition or the self-tape, and they don't give you, the respect that you feel like you deserve, or they don't give you the role, but they're still spinning all their plates and weren't really taking the time because they couldn't to deal with you. And you leave and think, oh, I did something wrong. And so you can take that information of, no, you're not getting that part. You can transform it into whatever you'd like. And so often, and this is where the actor's control and power can come in, so often actors choose, and indeed I believe, this is tough love, it is a choice, they use it to inform this narrative from the negative self-talk that, so that casting director that talked shit about me at that workshop 5 years ago was right, I'm not enough. Or that thing that mom said when I was 5, I guess I'm not. All that sort of stuff. Or the stuff, that you're telling yourself.
Right. But I think in that, and this is important because what you're saying just makes me think of the fact, and we all do this to some extent, but hypersensitive artists, individuals, which is why you're here in the first place,
right,
come with wounds and come with all that baggage. And you're looking for someone to tell you either you are as bad as you were told all those years, or to validate you and to accept you and to love you and tell you, what, everybody was wrong. You're actually good enough, and therefore, and the only way that happens is that you get the part.
Right.
That math doesn't make any sense. So it's really undoing all of that math, and realizing that is not logical. It may feel emotionally logical, but I think we all have to look at what happens when that shit comes up for us. I would recently met on a project to cast, and I still meet on projects to cast, and sometimes I think, oh my God, really, do I have to do this? I've got this 40-year resume. But these people, to them, it's the most important thing in the world. They want to know that they're being served, and also that they're going through what they call the process. So they go through the process. So I went in, I met on this thing. It wasn't the right job for me for a number of reasons. It didn't speak to me. I didn't not go in for it because I thought these are people that I may want to meet, but I did my research, I did my work, I was prepared, I went in and I gave a great meeting. We actually cried in the meeting, the show creator and me, together, over something that they were working on that show, because the show had been on for a few years. I walked out of there and I trusted my gut, and my gut said, that was a great meeting, but this is not your job. And I had to get right with that. That was my own intuition. But I didn't allow myself to make the choice. I didn't allow myself to walk away and say, great meeting, not my job, I'm walking away. I still had that little part of me that was waiting for somebody to call and say, we love you, we want you to do this. So then I could decide if I wanted to do it or not.
Sure.
And nobody called. For 2 weeks. So I got right with it and walked away from it. And then I got an email from the show creator 2 weeks later saying, I'm so sorry, but we've decided to stay in-house, and the casting director who had left for another job and was no longer available, we're just going to promote her associate, and we love you and want to work with you. And I took the high road, and I really believed that and said, I do want to work with you, but not on this. But it took me a while to get to that place, and I saw myself having to go through that transition from, oh, they didn't want me, to this isn't the right fit. I feel that in my bones. Walk away, and know that you've actually created a relationship.
Right.
But that's really hard stuff to do, and it's challenging no matter where you are in your career and no matter what the job is. That's the hard stuff. So it's also about getting right with your own baggage,
right,
your own history, and your own desperation for love, care, validation, and acceptance.
And again, that awareness of both the industry, but not only the industry, yourself, and how you react to all these things, and how your old stuff gets triggered.
Yeah.
And your cycle of praise and blame and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you talk about that you identify with the loss, I'm a loser, or you identify with, I booked the job, I'm the hero. And those waves will kill you. I mean, the highs will kill you and the lows will kill you if you identify with both of them. And understanding, I think, can help you with that.
Yeah.
And understanding that when the highs come, they're fleeting, And so enjoy them, but also don't expect them to be there forever. When the lows come, understand that that's part of the deal. They are also fleeting, but it's part of the deal. So there's an acceptance of both.
And you know what? The highs are not real. You have to also look at the highs, because the highs is a concept. You know, the highs then turn into, oh, now I have to get up at 4 a.m. and drive for 2 hours to a set, and then sit around, in my trailer for 10 hours, and then they cut my part in half, and then I get there and the star is an asshole, and then I have no turnaround, and then I'm told I'm cut out of the next scene that I thought, and all that starts happening, and that's your big high.
Right.
So it's a fantasy, it's an idea. Right. It's not real.
I used to get tattoos.
Okay.
That's how I would deal with rejection.
You have tattoos?
Many.
What?
Yeah. Did you not know that?
You have no tattoos. You're making this up.
Do indeed. So I booked a pilot, and it was a fancy pilot, with fancy people, and there were 6 leads on the show. And the thing got picked up. Hallelujah. And the contract said that if the thing gets picked up, I'm guaranteed a certain amount of episodes. Well, that guarantee yielded, so said the contract, $475,000.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice chunk of change.
It got picked up, and I thought, oh my God.
I'm rich.
I'm going to buy a house. Yeah. This is great, right? A week later, I was driving east on Ventura Boulevard just before Laurel Canyon. You're holding your heart because you know where this is going.
I know
to go.
that fucking corner is not a good corner.
Not a good corner.
Yeah.
And the manager called, and she said, I don't know how to say this, but they're demoting you for budgetary reasons to a recurring. $475,000 became $75,000. Now, had you told me that I was going to make $75,000, it would have been great. But except that lowering of the bar was pretty dramatic.
Yeah, the carrot didn't get dangled.
And I think the biggest hit of it all is that it felt like some sort of betrayal. Like, again, old stuff, right? Like my old narrative of people not treating me fairly. It's in the contract, And of course, as every actor who's been fired or whatever knows, like, what are you going to do? You're going to sue Warner Brothers? Good luck, and also you'll never work again. So what do? You suck it up. And so I went back to that first table read after me and so there were now we're just 4 leads, and the other 2, there were 6, now there are 4. The other 2 were turned into recurring, and one of the other guy who was also turned into recurring won a Tony, so I feel better about it all. But,
you were in good company.
Who knows what the real reasons were?
Yeah.
But they said it was budgetary, and they kept saying that. So all the same. So I showed up to that first table read, my first episode back, and the director, you introduce everyone in the table read, and the director said, Steve Braun, and then he put his hand towards me and said, who we love, trying to say they're there, it's okay. And I thought, you know what? Fuck you.
Oh, God.
And I was in that internalized place. And so I was like, I remember lying on the floor of my apartment for, like hours, like this was my moment, and that moment was taken away from me.
You. Right.
And so I woke up one day and walked down the street to I just needed to get cut. I just needed somebody to cut me.
To hurt you, to penetrate your skin and your soul.
And so I got a tattoo.
Can you show it to me? One of them?
I won't, no.
Really?
Yeah. But again, there's an example of an unhealthy way to deal with rejection. And had I been engaging in the kind of work, like my whole acting career, I was running out of gas and didn't know it. Because no one told me, but I also wasn't doing the work of finding out. And so then you do these ridiculous, unhealthy things, which don't make sense, but that's what you do,
Well, you do the unhealthy things until you figure out, and we're here to help with that and really give you our hearts on this, the things that you can do to take care of yourself. Because you need to take care of your instrument and your soul. You need to be good to yourself in all of this, because you're worth it. You're worthy, and you're not going to get to do the thing that you started out doing any other way, It's a challenge. It's challenging. And I think the other part of the rejection, aside from not getting the part, and I think this is what people feel deeply, actors especially, everybody, writers too, everybody, is that you're invisible. You don't even get rejected. I have actors say to me all the time, right? You do too. I just want a chance to get in the room and get rejected. I don't even get in the room, so that you feel like you're so outside the industry that you're living in a state of generalized rejection,
Right.
and you don't know who you are as an actor, an artist, and then translate that into, I don't know who I am as a human being, and then you just sink into the desperation of this generalized rejection.
Right. Oof.
It's heavy.
But stay with us, because we'll get there. I mean,
Yeah.
this is such an important thing to because I think, again, talking about soldiering on, actors can show up and put the smile on and try to, push through. I just had this conversation with an actor before we got in here. And there needs to be room for airing some of this stuff and talking about what it is and coming up with some tools, some strategies to navigate it with more grace than I think certainly I was able to do when I was pursuing an
Sure.
acting career.
Yeah.
So again, this understanding will take you to awareness, and hopefully that awareness will lead to some compassion, those people on the other side, more on that in a second. And hopefully that dulls the thing a little bit, because you have a sense of the mechanics that are at play that aren't personal, aren't directed specifically at you, even though it may feel that way, and so you can navigate the rejection and make it a little bit easier.
I want to say one more thing about
ahead.
the whole rejection thing in terms of the industry. Sometimes when you get rejected for a particular role, a lot of the time people are excited about you as a talent and want to work with you in the future and have a sense of relationship that has been created, and this is an investment in that. So it's not black or white, ever, ever, ever. And even if you walk in and do sucky work or send in a sucky self-tape, as far as you're concerned, or don't do your best work, people get to know you, and you're in their mind, you're in their memory, you're in their history, and things come out of that. This is your work, rejected or not, is an investment in a future relationship that has just begun by you just showing up and doing decent work.
No doubt. Again, a true, real understanding of the true nature of the industry.
Totally.
So this next notion, in the interest of navigating rejection, that we want to talk about is this notion of how badly and also why you want this job and what's associated with it. And again, it's this Buddhist notion of craving. Buddhists will tell you that the cause of suffering is craving. You want this thing so badly. So you want this thing that this casting director has the ability to give you, or so you think, she may or may not, or the showrunner or whoever. And you want it so badly because you want to pay your rent, you want to get the health insurance, you want the validation, you want. You're in deep, 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 deep need, and you don't get it. And the result is apocalyptic because your need was so great.
Right,
your craving was so deep and desperate. So the question is, how can you crave less? How can you want this less? Oh, but that feels antithetical to the, you better hustle and outwork because you gotta want this. Agents have said to me as I've been driving to go see my mother for some reason, when I was 25 or something, and saying no to an audition. But don't you want this? You have to really want this.
Sacrifice everything, be there no matter what, never get on a plane.
You can't travel. Don't travel.
Yeah, give it up. Give it all up so that you're there and available,
Right. So,
which is the soldiering on part.
That's right.
Yeah.
So then the question is, if you want to, manage the rejection, how can you crave less? How can you want the audition less than you do? Well, that's very, very difficult. But you can minimize the fallout from rejection by projecting as much pure artistic investment, a certain kind of wanting for a specific reason in that audition, but not all the extra stuff. So let's say you're in a relationship and your expectation of your partner is that they will pay your rent and they will pay your health insurance and they will validate you. They'll give you space to be an artist. I mean, this is the recipe for relationship failure, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not taking responsibility for your own shit. You're projecting too much stuff on that person, too much for that person to handle. And in the industry that we're in, that has no ability whatsoever to nurture you, it's just not designed for that.
And it's not responsible to
Absolutely.
either.
Yeah. And it's not even it being a dick. It's just like that's not the purpose of the industry. So then if you walk in looking at this hammer and expecting it to be a screwdriver and, screw you for not being, pun intended, for you not being the tool that I need right now or not giving me exactly what I need, that's on you. So then we have to find a way to take all of those things, the health insurance, the finances generally, your own validation, your need for artistic expression, et cetera, And I would even say, write them all down. What are you putting on top of this audition that isn't even helpful in the audition? And by the way, is your responsibility to deal with on yourself, and craft a life that takes care of that for yourself. I mean, this is big stuff, but you need to walk in there in a way that is emotionally healthy, so that the result is not apocalyptic when they do say no, and then you look at them and go, well, how dare you not let me get health insurance?
Right. But in addition to that, you walk in, when you're talking about emotionally healthy, those kind of people actually make an impression. Those kind of people are taking care of their own stuff, and therefore take care of the work, and therefore take care of the people on the other side. I won't even call it the other side. I don't think that's useful. The people who already have their job,
Sure.
so to speak. Then you get to be what we call an artistic leader, and you get to show up fully because you're not carrying in all that baggage. You find a way to let go of that, and so the work has to be more important.
Right. So there's space for generosity. There's space for you walking in and saying to them who are just desperate to cast this thing, I'm here to take care of you because I've taken care of my needs. Oh, shit. Like that reframes the entire room.
And it works. I
and
promise
by the way,
you it works.
It reframes your self-tape. It reframes the work that you do in the self-tape.
Yeah.
If the work in your self-tape smells of, I'm about to lose my insurance, maybe for a specific role.
Yeah.
but generally speaking, that's not the energy that you need to focus on your art and to offer something that solves their problem.
And it's hard to remember, again, coming back to the industry and with the reality of it, to walk in the room, to do a self-tape, to enter any relationship or meeting in the industry as with generosity and as a collaborator. So you've earned a seat at the table because you're talented, you've done your work, and you believe in yourself and your value, right? And you enter with that mindset, then you have a chance of figuring this out. And if it's not a good match, if it doesn't feel right for them or even for you, you're done. And that's fine. You move on to the next thing. But you're there, with a certain amount of might and strength and leadership, and that shift by taking the desperation out and all the baggage of the past out and being present with that in the room and in the work is not only a shift for your own self-care and dealing with rejection, but it changes how you're seen and experienced.
Yeah, no doubt. And can't underline this enough. And I understand that this is probably a really dramatic shift for most folks, but I tell you what, these actors, and so do I, and frankly, I was one towards the end of my acting career who, show up for coffee with their friends once a week. And back then we were smoking cigarettes. I wasn't, but many people smoke, and just like lamenting the business and why won't it give me this, and there's all these reasons why it's not happening for me, and screw them, and that sort of bitterness which leads to hopelessness, and that's where art dies. And so it's so essential that you create a life for yourself that is emotionally, artistically, and financially sustainable. And that's easier said than done. And that's coming from a person of privilege. And there's all sorts of reasons why that's harder for some folks than others. I just know that whatever that means for you, you have to create that for yourself so that you don't give up your power, so that you don't allow yourself to stay in that place of us and them. They have the ability to reject me. I hope I can go in there and please them this time, and if not, then we'll screw them. That kind of mindset can last for 10, 20 years, and that'll keep you in that place, that mindset of rejection. Keep informing this narrative that becomes an identity that I am a loser.
Oh, that's so fucking toxic.
But oh my goodness, and hard to fight out of.
Yeah.
And
then it also becomes an addiction.
No doubt.
You start to
your ego needs more of that fuel to maintain that identity,
because it sustains you. It gives you a sense of, it's not I can't take responsibility for myself, so I am going to live in a place of toxic rejection from the industry, from the business, from the audition experience, and I'm gonna just wallow in this, and that's the only place that I'm going to get a sense of power. Right. Which is bad news.
And the responsibility is a big part of this. Like it is your responsibility as an actor. It's on you to do the work of seeing past the us, them, the self, other dynamics of actor versus casting director, actor versus agent, actor versus director, etc.
We get a lot of questions about casting, about auditioning, about your careers and the business, and we want to focus on some of the ones we hear often. So we're going to take one right now with great question. Let's talk about that. So let's dive in.
So Tim V in LA, oh, hi Tim, says you talk about needing to love the work, but also doing the work of loving the work, which is a really powerful distinction and something that really resonates with me at this point in my life. Would you be able to expand on that? Yes, we would. I think the first thing to understand is that when you think of your work as an actor, maybe that means, audition technique or like honing, your scene study and your preparation, et cetera. To us, in the interest of career success, the work is actually self-care. The work is actually doing the work of loving the work. What do we mean by that? Well, it's very much like a relationship. And indeed, you're not just dating acting, you are married to acting, which means that you're going to navigate the ups and downs of all that. That requires you to go on dates regularly.
With the thing you love.
With that thing that you love.
Not dates outside of the thing you love.
That's right.
Yeah.
To date acting, to really think about all the ways in which acting brings you joy and do those things. And I've said this before, but if that means you need to take a clowning class, take the damn clowning class. If it means you need to, teach acting to kids somewhere, because that, like, whatever that thing is that will fill you up and bring you back to the joy of it. And I would say make it a practice. So your work might be dancing around to The Lion King in your underwear twice a week. And I say that with like a complete straight face. Like, if that's the thing that's going to lift you up and bring you joy because you're moving your body and you're singing and you're coming back to the elation of it, that turns into an audition technique. So it's going to be different for everyone.
Do you do that, Steve? Do you dance?
I don't. Been out of the game a little bit. I dance around to Moana quite a bit with my daughter.
What do you do?
For me, it is Qigong and Tai Chi and meditation. If I think of the things that fill me up, it's that. And my life is really busy, particularly right now with a 7-week-old and a 5-year-old. For some people, 2 kids is not a big deal. For my wife and me, it's like we're barely hanging on. And the studio takes up a lot of emotional energy because it's so alive and there's lots going on. And so I have to do the work of finding space where sometimes space doesn't look like it's there. Mm-hmm. So the work for me is coming back to the joy that I feel when I'm going through some kung fu form or something. That's joyful for me. And music is also a big deal for me. And with my daughter, who also loves music, it's the best thing in the world. That fills me up for sure. Mostly just sitting at a table eating dinner with my family. That's the thing that makes me let go of everything and just stay there.
And I know that you carve out time for that, and it's important.
I have to.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, to me, my responsibilities as a father and a husband, particularly coming from the childhood where I came from, are essential. I can't not give that my full attention. Yeah. That comes first, full stop. The thing just under that is dealing in as generous a way as I can with hypersensitive actors exploring truthful human expression, emotional expression. Because to me, that heals me in that, because I'm one of those people. And so, but what can get lost in that is, wait a minute, but where am I in this? Apropos of this discussion of me being sick right now. So the work then is to say stop, even to my family, even to my 5-year-old, and to say, no, I can't do X, Y, and Z right now because I need to, which is hard for me. Because I need to go in the backyard and stretch or whatever that thing is, right? So it's different for everybody, but doing the work of loving the work is giving it attention and giving a specific attention to the things that bring you joy about acting. And there is so much that is joyful about acting. You know, like, you get to feel and express deep elements of the human experience that most people out there in the world won't even go near because they can't or don't have the courage to or whatever. You get to feel that multiple times a day. So you got to focus on the joy of it and let that lead you. And that's the work of loving the work, I think.
Cool.
Moving on, Bill from Toronto. I love Toronto.
Hi, Toronto. We're both Canadians, Bill.
Yeah, Winnipeg.
If you're listening.
Go Jets. Getting rejected by representation, question mark. I was just let go by my agent after 5 years on a series. Wow. They said I was too hard to sell. It sucks. How do I navigate this?
Oh, so hard.
And again, especially the expectation of like, I just did the thing.
Yeah.
I made you money
For
for 5 years.
Yeah.
So we're in this now. I did my part in this relationship.
Yeah.
Now it's your turn to get me something else.
Yeah.
And, you know, look, the truth may be that they have someone else who is on a fancier TV show that requires their attention or blah, blah, blah. Who knows? To me, the answer is the same. It doesn't mean, like, maybe Bill's got a farther length to fall because, you know, you're on the TV series. You think there are expectations that come with that. But it's so hard, but you have to come back to the beginning. Why do I do this? Would I do this if I didn't have an agent? You know, your identity is gone. Because the next question after, you know, what have you been in is, or who's your agent? Do you have an agent?
And I suspect it actually frees you because if your agent let you go, so to speak, it probably means things were not working.
Yeah.
And if they weren't working, you probably didn't recognize it. You know, it's like I know for myself and for everyone I see, those are not healthy relationships. They're not productive relationships. So you got to stop and go, wait a minute, was this even working for me?
Right.
And likely, I would say 99.9% of the time, it's not working, and they're the first persons to end it. It's like go back to the relationship. You're not in a working, functioning relationship, and so somebody finally, for whatever reasons, says this isn't working, and so you have to get right with the fact that this was not serving you and move on from that.
And I would systemize this, and maybe this is just like the way my brain works, and Bill's brain may work differently, but how do you navigate it? Give yourself a certain amount of time to grieve for this.
Yeah.
Your grieving is not going to fall just within that time. It's going to spill out into other, but give yourself a certain amount of time to just let this go and fuck it, and I'm pissed off and whatever that is. And then come back to the work. You know, the hardest thing, I may have said this before, but the hardest thing that an actor, I think, can do is not actually be in the desert for 10 years. It's be on the TV series for 15 years and then hit a bit of a desert.
Yeah, much higher
and walk
fall.
back into this very room where we're standing right now, you know, with your $4,000 handbag and come back to the work.
Yeah.
From the very beginning without ego.
Yeah.
That is hard, but that's what's required.
It's necessary. And find what come back to your value and come back to what you care about and then work from that place.
Right.
You know, and then the right kind of representation, healthy representation will come. And we talk about that in another podcast as well.
No doubt.
Yeah.
If you have a question that you'd like to have answered here on the Acting Podcast, email us at theactingpodcast@gmail.com. That's theactingpodcast@gmail.com. And put "great question" in the subject line so we'll know. We're ready to hear your question and offer our take on the answer. Go ahead and email today. We're here. So we've unpacked, as the kids say, some of these notions of rejection, and it gets dark and deep. And I think we may have cut a little close to the bone for a lot of actors because this is part of their world. But there is hope, and there are things you can do, like steps you can take. And you and I both know this, that the way out of, I'm in this awful place, is one step at a time, tiny little bites. Pull out the calendar, like, what does next week look like? Let's do these things, one thing every day, step by step by step, and all of a sudden you're shifting your mindset. The neurons are firing in a different way. You're rewiring your brain and all this. And so what this takes us to, in terms of this notion of it being your responsibility, are the steps. And I think a big part of it starts with self-care. Knowing that the industry can be emotionally violent and that it can feel like your whole life is at the mercy of another person's decision, you have to keep yourself in good mental, emotional, and physical health, financial health, to meet those challenges. So one of the first things, I think, as an actor is always reminding yourself that you are an actor. Always reminding yourself why you are an actor.
Yeah.
This feels like a remedial exercise. And in fact, I had that resistance from an actor just recently who said, this is ridiculous. What are we doing here? We're writing for 4 minutes on why I'm an actor. Come on. Well, I tell you what, if you don't know, you're going to be walking east when really you should be walking west, because you're bouncing off these reactions of the industry, or the agent says this, or but I do need money, so I'm going to do this or do that. You have to come back to, why am I doing this? So that your intention dictates your actions. And that grounds you in a place where you understand what you want, why you're doing this, and it deflects some of the rejection just by going through, a 10-minute writing meditation or a little writing exercise on, this is why I do this. This is why this matters to me.
Well, it brings you back to the core of why you started this thing and why you care about it. So do you really care that much about that one audition because you haven't had one in 2 months and it's a co-star role on a network TV show or a commercial? I mean, I get it, you want that on your resume, you want the money, all that.
Right.
But if you're going to put your focus outward on that and not understand what's really important, what you really deeply care about, then there's a huge disconnect between the heart of this thing and the way you're putting yourself out in the world.
So your focus goes where your heart wants it to go, which is probably the most efficient path to whatever you think success is. Yeah. And moreover, all those trite little things that you don't get hurt less, because that's, sure, you want them. It's not the worst thing in the world to get a paycheck, or maybe they're not paying, whatever it is. But you're focused on what you really want. There's a focus there.
And you know what? I just want to say that, Steve, you and I came to this work we're doing right now into the studio because of that. I have to look at that all the time.
Yeah.
So I want to say one thing, and people may not know this about me, but in terms of casting, it's not the be-all, end-all for me. It's not the heart of what I love to do. I do it well, and there are parts of it that I really love. I love working with actors. I love giving somebody a role, not that it's mine to give, but being able to do it. I love being in the process of creating something, and helping and facilitating for others. But it's not the heart of what I love. It's not my why. And I think what happens in that is that I stray sometimes, and then I go after jobs that I don't really want, and I get even that kind of rejection or that kind of acceptance, that kind of celebrity in all of this means absolutely nothing, because it doesn't serve the heart and core of what I care about. And that's why we built this studio and are doing this work, because we came back to what was important so that we can have this touchstone and this heart and this core of the work that feeds us and others around us. And that's so important to know what that is for you guys listening. And to find a way to come back to that so you're sustaining yourself, and then again, the rejection is meaningless when you have this to come home to.
Absolutely. And that's an extension to me of knowing why you do this, is then staying in the work that you love. And the doing for actors is what reminds you that you are an actor and that you love it and that you're good at your art. And so when you drown yourself in that exploration for its own sake, and by the way, you can do it at such a black belt level that the auditions are even an exploration of that art that you love. Even if it's this, piece of crap, not fully fleshed out, amalgam of different scenes for some pilot that will never make it or whatever. And you can approach it with that level of generosity and, hey, I'm an actor and this is good, which, by the way, again, is a practice, is a mindset. Then all of a sudden, again, you start mitigating the rejection. The rejection doesn't have teeth.
And you know what happens? When you do that, it doesn't matter. When actors walk in a room that I'm running or that I'm in and bring that kind of excitement and love of the thing, and it may sound, oh, I love my work and here I come, but really are there to work, really are there to exercise their artistry, their craft, their love of this thing.
It's not some blissed out thing. Like the work is frustrating and you want to pull your hair out, but it's great.
Yeah, but it's great. And they come in with that and they remind me, oh shit, yeah, this is the important stuff. Yeah, and I've seen that kind of thing affect, tired directors and pissed off producers and neutral studio executives and light them up.
Right.
And you light them up, they will cast you because they need that. So to bring that kind of joyous conviction and hard work to the table without being about getting the job, but doing it because that's all you know, and that's the practice you've gotten into, rejection is not even on the table.
Right.
And you actually book work with that. It's palpable. It's extraordinary.
So the next notions of self-care here involve mental and physical health. All this stuff is connected, obviously, particularly for artists. But notions of meditation, I think, are important. If that elicits an eye roll for you, I will submit that meditation doesn't necessarily mean you shaving your head and wearing a robe and sitting for 45 minutes. That's not what this is. It can happen at any moment. You can walk and meditate. You can write, certainly, and meditate. Yeah, it can happen seated, drinking tea, whatever that is. It's just stopping, coming back to your breath. I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out. Or a version of that, which is contemplation, which is just you looking inside. That's all that is. Here's why this is practical in the face of rejection. So my experience with meditation is that if I spend the time looking inside, I see myself eventually. If you don't like yourself, it means that you're just not looking clearly enough. So you see who you are. And eventually, with practice, you accept what you see, because it's undeniable. I'm looking at a wall and it's blue, and that's it. And that's just the truth of the thing. You're wearing a black sweater. That's objectively truth to a certain extent. And so when I see myself and I know who I am because I've done that meditative work, writing, breathing, whatever that is, then when I get rejected for a myriad reasons, it's tantamount to someone saying, we didn't like you, you were wearing a blue shirt. And I look down at my shirt, which I'm doing right now, and I know that it's gray. And so I can say, oh, okay, you wanted an orange, and I am an apple, and take care, bless and release. It wasn't a good fit, as you said. This wasn't my project. So it again, that self-knowing, having a clear sense of who you are. And by the way, sometimes they'll say, we didn't want you because your shirt was gray. And I'll say, my shirt is gray, isn't it? And so that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
But so that grounding in the self-knowing, I think, again, obliterates the rejection. Because it's tantamount to walking out at midnight and, but I expected there to be sun. Well, no, because it's midnight, right? So if you wanted this, and I know who I am, and I'm this, then great.
Well, that's like what Bob Joy does, which I've told you before.
Terrific actor, friend of the studio.
Loves to audition, and doesn't care about rejection. I mean, he cares about it. But
gardening and auditioning.
Gardening and auditioning. And working. I mean, for him, it's work. For him, it's just, oh, great, I got something to work on today. How great is that? But his whole thing is, they were not buying apples that day. They were buying bananas, and I am the best darn apple you could ever want. So when they're ready for apples, they know where to find me.
Yeah.
And I get it that they just wanted a banana today.
Right.
And I wasn't that for them, and that's okay. But I brought in my fullest self, and they will remember that when they need an apple.
The next of this stuff is you got to eat right, you got to sleep well, you got to do your best to live a lifestyle that is healthy and that nurtures your body, your instrument. Elements of this 10-day challenge, we have many of them, and we'll have a link to the 10-day challenge in this, that facilitates some of this self-care. And along with this, I'll say financial health. And this is a big one. If you put yourself in a position, as I did for a certain time, because I thought I was fancy, because I booked a TV series, and the money from that didn't work. That was one season, didn't work the next year. And what I didn't know, because I got no financial education growing up, was that you hear a certain number, but you cut it in half for agent, manager, tax, and all of a sudden it's not as much as you need. You spread that over 2-3 years, booked a couple things here or there the next 3 years. All of a sudden, it's no more than making 40, 50 a year. And then, year 4, you better be catching up again because you got to pay the rent again. So figuring out a way to have a financially sustainable life is essential. That may mean that you have to get a job that you don't want to get. But again, if you understand what you value, what you want, then getting the job is not some sort of embarrassment. It's I am supporting the thing that I love, that I want. That focus is essential.
Which gets tricky when you start to hit 45 and it's not happening for you, and you feel like I'm still bartending, and what's my value in all this? But being able to come back to the work you love and finding a way to do that so that you are not living in a place of less than, of scarcity, whatever that looks like. And we'll talk about more of that in our Actors Money podcast that'll be coming up later. But this is hugely important to understand that your value is not connected to some job that you may have that you need to sustain yourself.
If for no other reason other than you have to take the power back. You can't give someone who doesn't have the ability to help you in the way that you want, even though you think they do, you can't give them the power to your, the keys to your financial future or present even. It can't be borrowing from tomorrow to pay for yesterday.
Yeah.
Because again, we're talking about taking responsibility for all of this stuff.
And you have to want this badly enough to do it.
Sure.
If this is too hard, then do something else.
No doubt.
Take a break.
Because it's not worth it,
yeah.
by the way.
Yeah.
Like, go get a job where you make 40, 50 a year consistently.
Yeah.
Because the money might equal out. Once you take care of all the financial highs and lows and you sort of like average it all out.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of party. There's no threshold past which I don't know anyone, and you and I both know some pretty fancy people because it's Los Angeles and
Yeah.
they're sort of like the local wildlife, these celebrity people. I don't know anyone who doesn't worry about money. And these are like rock stars and like people who've been on, many, many TV series.
And a lot of them are not really happy at all. So they're making money, so they may be successful,
Right.
but they're worried about other things. I know a guy who just, makes so much money, but he's going back to the heart of what he loved 20, 30 years ago because all the money is meaningless because it's not feeding his artistic soul.
Absolutely.
One thing I want to mention in all of this is that when good things happen, we sometimes don't know how to process good things because you actors, all of us, are living sometimes in a place of lack and rejection and not being good enough, and we expect things to go badly because it feels like they go badly so much of the time. So we're living in this place of lack, and we assume that something will go wrong or that the other shoe will drop. So even if something good happens, like, oh, I got that job, but they'll fire me, or I got pinned, but they'll never cast me, or whatever those things are, like assuming that it's going to go badly. And so what we have to do is we have to retrain ourselves to, first of all, appreciate the wins, the real wins, and celebrate the wins, even the small wins, and then also celebrate every little victory that happens. So you go in a room and you're not nervous, or you get in the room and you actually had a connection with the reader. Like, those are victories, and those victories can build. And if you can celebrate those, if you can walk out of those rooms, whether it's in your career or in your audition or whatever it is, that you can look at what's working, aside from going and finding things in your life that work for you and find the positives. But if you can start to celebrate those things, then you retrain yourself so that when good things happen, they're good. And when things don't go 100% right, something in there was valuable. Something in there was a win. So to celebrate the work, to celebrate your voice, to celebrate your vulnerability, your courage, the fact that you showed up is such an important thing. And even if it's a loss, what about being good to yourself and celebrating the fact that you did show up? And so you turn a loss into a celebration, an appreciation, a victory of sorts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So look, we know that these are challenging steps to take, particularly if you're deep in this place of feeling wounded by the industry. But this is the essential work of coming out of that shadow to face the industry with dignity and your best foot forward. The other thing I'll say, and this is perhaps more of an acute response to rejection, is create a self-care buffer, some sort of like break glass in case of rejection situation that fills you up. Don't have some sort of like awful meeting with your father or whatever right after an audition. You can create some sort of, I need an hour afterwards to go get a coffee by myself, read this kind of book, listen to this kind of podcast, whatever that thing is for you.
Something nurturing.
Absolutely, so that you are taking care of yourself. Again, and understanding that rejection will happen. Your agent will at some point drop you. You at some point will have to fire your agent. All of these emotional spikes will happen. So you want to put together some sort of earthquake kit, so that you can navigate them with grace. Yeah. And you may need to clear your schedule a little bit and tell people that I just need some space here, or be with the people that you love, or whatever that is.
Yeah, and just look around and see what's important to you in your life. Have a life, in all of that. Because if you're defining yourself by the work you don't get and all of that sense of lack and scarcity, then you're in this very dark, bleak hole, and you can't work from that place, you can't create from that place, you can't sustain yourself in a healthy way from that place.
And this is the fundamental element of our studio, even what we offer, that you have to show up to your work as a whole, happy human being artist.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you got a couple, one or two hands tied behind your back, and it's just not worth it. So let's then talk about how doing this kind of work changes the artistic work that you do in the audition room or in the self-tape. So when you have this clarity and you're caring for yourself, we alluded to this before, there's an element of generosity in your work. So, from this place of scarcity or fear of rejection or the fight or flight stuff, you either start schmacting, I'm going to make this choice so I can weep because I got to show them something big. I have to make this grand gesture so they think I'm terrific and give me the money. Or alternatively, I'm not giving them my heart here.
Then
so
you
I'm
shut
gonna
down and
protect shut
disappear.
down. Again,
Yeah,
the fight or the flight and all this. So if
and we talk about this. Patsy Rodenberg talks about the second, third circle.
Right.
Those are the first and third circles. But
Right.
what is that second circle of presence?
Absolutely. And so the presence happens in your preparation even.
Yeah.
So with a clear artistic lens, you can allow yourself to be affected by this email and these sides that came through. And not think, oh, fuck, I got to, schlep my way to, Culver City for 6 p.m. on a Friday, and this sucks, and they're not going to hire me anyway, blah, 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 blah. That's not going to help you. But if you're in this place of, oh, I get to work today on something, cool. You start elevating this piece to the level of humanity. You start letting it affect you in deeper places because you're vulnerable to the work. You start making choices that are not of, this is how they'll hire me, and more of, but this is what speaks to me here. Certainly in collaboration with the breakdown and the tone, and of course, but you're not making these desperate choices. And so you walk in, there's this undercurrent of, when you're taking responsibility for all your needs, of, I got this thing that I want to show you. I'm not sure where you're at on this thing, but here's where I'm at, and I want to give it to you. And again, the molecules in the room change. It's reframed.
Yeah.
And you talk about that quite a bit, being on the other side of the camera, let's say.
Yes, that's
when
a good
actors
way to
come
put
in.
it. Yeah.
It's a different world.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're in that place of presence, then, and leaving all of that stuff behind you without any expectation or need of booking this thing, so you're not looking at the outcome, you're just present in the work, which is what the goal is all the time. You make the reader the star of your audition, as you say. That's you focus on that person. Your need it turns into the need of the work, what you need in the scene, what you need in the relationship, what you need in that very moment, and then you start to show up with incredible presence and excitement and conviction to the story that you're telling. All the other shit goes away. There's no space for it. The only thing that matters is getting what you want in that moment, in that scene, from that person. And when you do that, when you're in that incredible place of presence, there's no space for rejection, really. And you affect the reader, and you affect the person in the room, or you affect the person who's watching your self-tape.
Right.
And that's the kind of championship work that makes all the difference. And so when you've done that kind of work and you really have shown up, it's like you're walking off stage after doing a performance that you go, that was joyous and I was present in that with other human beings, then you move on and you can then go do other things. And then getting the role is not only secondary, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Because you may do that kind of great, amazing black belt level work and still not get cast.
Of course.
For all kinds of silly reasons that have nothing to do with the great work you did. All you have control over is that kind of work that you do.
And I think worth noting that presence doesn't mean, that we're asking you to walk into the audition having done all this work and life is glorious and like you're some Stepford drone. That's not it at all.
No, not at all.
In fact,
No.
you're a hypersensitive person. So what we're doing here is actually calming the lake so that when you drop the stone into the lake, you can actually see the sensitivity, the reflection amplified.
Yeah.
Whereas if there's so much shit going on and you need it and it's this churning, water, you drop the stone in and you don't see anything. So we're creating space for your hypersensitivity, so your sadness and your anger and your joy and whatever else can show up in the work. To me, that's presence. It's not making you this blissed out, happy person, which I think, again, like people say, I'm so zen, like that's not what this is.
Because also in the scene, if you're, about to confront somebody because they messed with your family, you're going to come in hopefully charged and full of anger and specific stakes for yourself.
Right.
And you're good, but you're going to be doing it in a way that is at the level of the kind of work you're not only capable of doing, but that you'll ultimately be expected to do when you walk on set or into rehearsal.
Oh my goodness.
So you have to be working at that level, and again, that creates space for what's really, really important. And I want to say something about this whole hypersensitivity thing, because I don't want to underestimate or undermine rather that those huge feelings. We're not talking about not being affected by the work you do. We're asking you to show up vulnerable and full, right, and put your heart out on the butcher block so that people might just chop it up into a bunch of pieces and then toss it onto the ground and the next one comes in. And you have to find a way to be okay with that, because you have been given an opportunity to show your heart, to show yourself, to be vulnerable, to show what is living in you, what your emotional choices are and what your emotional life is. And by doing that, it does risk a lot, but if you don't show up in your relationships, in your family, and in the world, and in the work, then we don't get to see you. And how can you be cast or even collaborated with if you aren't willing to show up with all of that stuff? So this is a great place to put all of those big feelings, not to come in and like to be pouring, your soul out inappropriately, but to understand that there is a place to put that into the work.
Yeah, and it's precisely because we understand the courage required to do this, to be vulnerable. I mean, you've chosen, you actors, to make vulnerability your business, to make emotional expression, to be affected and affect other people, your business.
Yeah.
And not only that, but like do it in these, high-powered situations with these sharks of the industry, potentially telling you that you suck, or worse, not even hearing you after 20 years of knocking at the door. So that requires a really robust, proportional amount of self-care so that you can keep showing up to that situation whole and with some sort of joy and excitement in continuing to do this work, and it's essential.
Yeah.
So I guess at this point, what we take it from these notions of here are some steps to the actual practical stuff of this is, and I would suggest everyone do this, get out a calendar. If you don't have one, buy one, and I would say, have one in front of you, not just on the phone, and take the next week or so to play with some of these notions, put them on the calendar, and take half an hour to do some of this stuff.
And make space for them, because it's easy to say, well, I've got my day job and I've got my kids and I'm moving and I've got all this other stuff I need to do.
Nothing ever changes.
Then nothing changes. So you've committed to that practice. Carve out some space where you need it to do this kind of work. Also, let's share. We're going to share these in the show notes. The 10-day Actors Challenge.
Let's do it. Yeah.
That we've done a couple of them, and it's been really exciting because it's affected you guys. I've done them. You've done them right alongside everybody else. But we're going to offer them to you in our show notes here on the page or on Apple Podcasts, so that you have a chance to jump into this 10-day challenge to help give yourself some practical tools to jumpstart this exercise of self-care.
Yeah, super important stuff.
The other thing we didn't really talk about, or we did a little bit, but I see it all the time, and I'm in the middle of seeing it as you are, is taking responsibility for your own career. So again, if you don't get a part, it's like, okay, but I have to go make this short film right now that I've been working on, that I love, and I've raised the money, or I'm collaborating with my friends, my peers, and that you're deeply immersed in the creating of work, so that you don't need somebody else to tell you you're worthy, you're a good actor, you're talented. You actually get to practice that.
Yeah.
And we do that here a lot in class, at the studio, and we also see our actors change the molecules of their own sense of selves and their own sense of success and their own sense of rejection by taking responsibility for their work and reevaluating what's important and just moving forward as artistic leaders. And it's beautiful to watch, and it's palpable. And that's something that everybody can do.
It emits a frequency that people can see.
Yeah.
So you're not, again, it shifts the relationship from you and the industry from one of need to one of attraction. I'm leading and I'm doing this thing. If you want to come with me, you're welcome to, but this is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And that is a very powerful shift.
And when you walk into an audition room and you're in that place of working, whatever that looks like.
Right.
If you're doing a play off Broadway or somewhere in whatever city that you're in, it doesn't matter if it's fancy or high end. It's just you're doing really solid work, you're in a robust practice. If you're in class and you're exercising that, if you're making work, if you're writing, if you're creating, if you're collaborating, when you walk in with that kind of leadership, it's palpable and affects people. It affects also the ease with which you align your acting from your own work to the audition room and back, you know? And the reason why people keep booking work over and over again, the same people, some of it is because the industry is lazy, we know that, but a lot of it is because those people walk in and they're not even thinking about rejection. They're just thinking about, hey, I'm here to work, I'm here to do my thing, and then I have to go do all this other stuff. We love sharing this content with our community. We offer it 100% free, and it's our privilege to do so. If you're loving this podcast and are interested in offering something in return, go ahead and subscribe to the Acting Podcast. Then find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to your podcast and leave us an honest rating and review. Your words will help us bring this work to even more actors and artists around the world.
Thank you so much for listening and for being here with us. We love how this community shows up for us and for each other, online and in the studio. And as a thank you to our incredible community, we want to give you an amazing free gift. It's called the Comprehensive Guide to the Perfect Self-Tape.
So all you have to do is screenshot your review, send it to theactingpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll send you an exclusive gift of the Perfect Self-Tape Guide to take your work to the next level.
And come visit us online at thebgbstudio.com. And if you're in LA, Atlanta, or New York, jump into a class with us. We're here to get you into the kind of shape necessary to be successful.